One day few years ago, stranger struck up conversation with me at bakery. I asked her to have coffee with me, even though I would never normally do such a thing. I was about to grab coffee at our local bakery when a stranger started chatting with me. He was friendly, charismatic, and had a wicked smile. So I decided to do something I would never normally do. I asked him to join me for a coffee and a piece of cake. At first he said it wasn't possible, but it didn't take long to convince him. In another scenario, it might have seemed scandalous for married mother of 3 to ask a random man to share treat with her. But that wasn't the case in this scenario. You see, this man named Bryan was 91 years young. I was 34 years old at the time and there was a 57-year age difference between us. Bryan and I quickly became close friends despite our age difference. As we sat in sun chatting about the news of day, I asked Bryan to tell me about himself. He told me he was writing book and had recently taken ride in Cessna, small, single-engine airplane. While talking to him, I realized that I was impressed by his passion for life. Bryan proved to be a great speaker and asked me questions about my life while sharing his own insights. I found your company extremely interesting. Instead of talking about somewhat meaningless topics like television shows, we chatted about life after death and sexuality. We discussed the influence of religion, natural disasters, up-and-coming comedians, and whether money equals happiness. When our coffee date ended, I asked Bryan for his number. Again, normally I would never be this forward, but this encounter felt special, and thus began a beautiful friendship. When I introduced Bryan to my husband, he was equally intrigued. Bryan immediately felt like family. His wife and son had passed away and he was living alone. Luckily, his house was nearby, so he could ride his mobility scooter for an occasional coffee or breakfast. Sometimes he would bring treasures from the past, like an autograph book signed by U.S. soldiers who visited where we lived in Melbourne, Australia, during World War II. My kids loved listening to his colorful stories and giggling. Ageism often hinders friendships like ours. Ageism is ingrained in our culture. This is a form of prejudice or discrimination against older people based on inaccurate stereotypes. Considerable research has demonstrated effects of ageism on older adults, particularly terms of care they receive in medical system and their interactions workplace. People of all ages show bias towards older adults, but the ways they express this change with age, while the preference for other young adults is more pronounced among teenagers. This preference becomes more implicit among older adults. The thing is, older people have a lot to offer, especially when it comes to friendship. Research supports my personal experience. Intergenerational friendships offer all kinds of benefits. A 2021 paper titled Inte,